The young woman was startled by a scream from the room. She ran as fast as she could toward the source of the noise. Throwing the door open, the breathless girl rushed to ask what had happened. The sight she saw shocked her. The noisemaker's leg looked terrible, throbbing like crazy. The guy who made the noise begged her to find a healer to fix him up. Not long before this awful night, a tired and wounded adventurer named Tucker was running towards the settlement. Reaching it, he was overjoyed, because now he was safe and nobody was out to get him. The guy knew the wolves, the ones that mauled Tucker, traveled in packs, but he had no idea how big they were. Those savage wolves were relentless and just wanted to tear poor Tucker to shreds. He couldn't handle such a huge group. Each wolf was seriously strong, and all they wanted was blood and to end the poor guy. Remembering them sent shivers down Tucker's spine and left him speechless. All he wanted right now was to get his wounds healed. A sweet girl at the Adventurers Guild greeted him, handed him the bill for his treatment, and told him to get some rest. Tucker was feeling pretty beat, so he decided to head out and recover ASAP. He barely made it out the door before some guy approached him, saying he didn't need to go far to find a healer. This stranger, who called himself Houston, introduced himself as a healer and offered his services for a small fee, payable after he was done. Tucker thought this was weird and shady, so he asked the guy to show him his healer's mark. See, tons of people used to claim they were healers because they got paid bank. That's why the Adventurers Guild started issuing a special mark to people with actual healing powers to weed out the fakes. Houston didn't have one, and Tucker was quick to ditch the bold-faced liar. The guy, the one who said he was a healer, pointed out the claw marks on Tucker's arm. Tucker slowed down, wondering what Houston was getting at. The second Tucker heard the guy mention wolves, he froze solid, a shiver of fear running through him. But Houston kept pushing, pointing out that the main character's bum ankle was the reason he ran into the wolves in the first place. The guy was totally thrown. How could this dude know all that, and in such detail? But Houston didn't let Tucker get a word in, still offering his healing skills, which the other guy still didn't trust. This dude gave Tucker the creeps, and the wounded hero told the stranger to cut the crap with the snake oil. But he wouldn't let up, saying if his ankle was killing him in the night, he could swing by Houston's hotel and ask for help. Later at the church, a priest, who had the mark of a healer, fixed up Tucker's shoulder. The wound healed right before his eyes, leaving not a trace on the main character's body. The priest said a prayer and then dropped the price for the healing, which wasn't exactly cheap. Tucker was grateful, and with a satisfied look and a sense of relief, he headed back to the hotel. Later, back in his room, he started screaming from the pain in his ankle. It was burning like it was about to burst into flames. Tucker was begging the hotel worker to find him a healer, ASAP. He was freaking out, not understanding why the priest's healing didn't work. Then it hit him. Houston had said the holy power couldn't fix his ankle before he left. While Tucker was dealing with the pain and trying to figure out how to find that mysterious healer, the guy himself walked into his room. The healer, the one who can't heal, showed up to help Tucker out. He told the hotel worker he could handle it, and she was relieved. Walking up to our main man, the healer decided to rub it in that Tucker had shelled out a ton of cash for treatment that didn't even work. Even though he was smirking at Tucker's misery, he was still gonna save his busted ankle. But this time, the price is gonna be a little steeper than their first meetup. Tucker was clueless why the healing price had suddenly doubled. Whatever excuse he came up with, the price hike was definitely because my leg was getting worse. Being broke, Tucker offered up his sword, saying it was worth 200,000 gold. The healer agreed to the deal, even though the sword wasn't worth what Tucker claimed. Tucker, reeling from the pain, was still grateful for the healer's kindness. As the healer started examining my leg more closely, I started freaking out, thinking I was a goner. The guy next to me said not everything can be fixed with holy power, like, say, the poison in Tucker's leg, which scared the crap out of me even more, so much so that I started sweating bullets. The healer gave Tucker a black lingonberry and told him that wolves hang out near those berry bushes. They drive their prey into the bushes to make the kill easier, and that news scared Tucker stiff. The doctor put a jar of liquid in front of our hero, an antidote to black lingonberry poison. When Tucker saw the healer holding a knife, he thought he was about to lose a leg, but all Houston needed to do was pour the antidote on the open wound. It was excruciating for Tucker, but damn effective. A few years back, Houston wound up in another dimension, without even knowing how. The first thing he saw was a bloodthirsty monster, like a giant bat, that wanted to eat him. Houston managed to defend himself from the predator, but not everyone made it out alive. It was at that moment that Houston was assigned the healer class. The people who survived also ended up here by accident from another world, where there isn't even a hint of magic. Some wanted to stay, while others wanted to return to Earth. One of the girls agreed to stay here and fight with the group. While everyone was figuring out what to do in this situation, Houston was scrolling through his class skill list. Not finding a single skill related to healing, he wondered why they weren't there. Tucker was totally wiped out when the healer finished with his ankle. He looked like death warmed over from exhaustion and pain. But even with all that pain, he was super grateful to Houston for not screwing him over and actually healing him. The wound Houston stitched up looked way better, but he still couldn't figure out how Houston could heal someone without any healer skills. Tucker apologized to the doctor, who he'd called a quack and ripped into yesterday. Houston just brushed it off, saying he hears stuff like that all the time and it doesn't bother him. He actually gets a kick out of seeing those same people crawling back on their hands and knees, begging for help. That reaction to desperate people struck Tucker as kinda weird, but he decided to drop it and change the subject. After the healer left the room, he decided to grab a bite at the hotel restaurant. He asked the friendly waitress for some food. She was all smiles and helpfulness with the guests. Then he headed to a table. Houston had this weird habit of writing down the day's events just to keep himself grounded. This dimension, totally different from his home, was crawling with some seriously nasty and dangerous creatures. He didn't want to stick around in a world where survival was a long shot, you know? Monsters could off you any second. While the worker was prepping, she pricked her finger, and Houston noticed. The doc couldn't just ignore it, so he went over to ask what happened, which totally spooked the girl. Using his ability, the main character easily figured out what was up. Turns out, just a simple cut. The guy held out his hand and offered the girl some help, and the young lady didn't turn him down. He used one of his skills to stop the bleeding, easing the girl's tingling from the cut. Healers get points for helping out, and since Houston racked up a bunch, he decided to spin the wheel. He kicked off the magic roulette and started waiting to see what he'd get. Houston wasn't thrilled with the prizes. He landed on coins, which he didn't really need. But besides the coins, other stuff dropped too. One spin result really made the guy happy. It was a new skill that boosts potion effectiveness. After finishing his food, he grabbed a potion bottle and decided to test out his new ability. Houston left the inn, used the skill, and downed the potion. He was stoked with the results. Now he can use this skill on patients, so he doesn't have to just slosh potion all over their wounds. Testing out his new power, he didn't notice he almost ran right into some dude. The ticked-off guy started waving his sword around, yelling some choice words, and generally losing it on Houston. The healer apologized to the guy he nearly knocked over and accidentally hurt. Hearing it was the healer who restored his strength when they bumped into each other, he chilled out. The guy asked Houston to join their squad, saying they needed healers for a mission. He explained that their squad was hunting some rare monsters that were seriously dangerous. The guy proudly announced the reward for the completed mission, all pumped up, and Houston was like, "Whoa!" A smile crept across his face, and he wouldn't mind joining their squad, especially since they didn't have any other healers. Meanwhile, back at the Adventurers Guild, 2 other members of the squad had found a healer. This guy was super confident in himself and his skills, totally thinking he could handle being the only healer in the group. When Houston and Rick, the guy who'd offered him a spot, showed up with the others, Rick was confused, wondering who this third wheel was. But his partner figured it out. They'd brought in 2 healers at the same time. To avoid any drama, they asked everyone if they were cool with splitting the reward, since more people meant less cash for each of them. Both healers were down with that, because they weren't sweating the money as much as the skills and gear they could snag. After hearing that, Frank and Houston introduced themselves, and they seemed pretty chill with each other, which was the opposite of the other healer, who was totally ticked off that Houston showed up. 5-man squad headed out on a mission, talking about the job and the monster. One of the guys was stoked because they now had 2 healers on the team, which would keep them from kicking the bucket. The other healer, though, he already hated Houston's guts just for being there. This dude decided to brag about all his skills with total enthusiasm and pride, hoping the whole squad would be impressed. When Houston was asked about his abilities, he showed off his newest power. The other healer hated it so much, he started chewing his nails in frustration. Houston asked Frank about the monster they were hunting. Their main target is a rare and powerful monster that can mess with your head, a sewer rat. The guys in the squad were psyched about the easy mission, thinking a rat wouldn't be a problem. Houston was different, though. He didn't get why everyone was taking this monster so lightly. Knowing how tough this mission is, Houston suggests the guys head back to town and prep better. But Frank didn't see the point in wasting time and getting worked up over some measly rat. He figured it wouldn't be that strong. The squad's other healer accused Houston of being a coward and told him to leave, which he agreed to. The squad was seriously surprised by Houston's response and didn't get why he agreed with the other healer so quickly. Frank asked if he was sure about his decision, but Houston knew they were doomed if they didn't understand how serious this mission was. After the guy left, the remaining squad members moved on and ran into the rat. Seeing that some were having doubts, the healer rallied the troops, telling them not to back down when they were so close. The team, now just 4 strong, jumped into the fight against the massive rat, which was hundreds of times bigger than a normal one. While they were attacking the rat, they didn't notice it sneaking up behind one of the team members. The rat was super aggressive, making it clear that it was the only one walking away from this fight. This thing summoned other rats, controlling their minds, so they would protect it and kill people. The squad was losing to these monsters, and even the healer was useless, just standing there, clueless about what to do. While everyone was getting shredded by rats, Rick decided to bail from the battlefield. He wasn't about to die at the claws of some monster. But right in front of him, a magic portal opened up. He was so freaked out, he didn't even see it, and ran straight into it. Stepping through the portal, the dude ended up right back where he started, where he'd been running from. It took him a second to figure out how he'd gotten back to the place he was trying to escape. He went pale. It hit Rick that there was no getting out of this, no matter how hard he tried. The little rats, controlled by the big bad, attacked the guy and were about to go for the healer when they were stopped. Houston came back to the squad to save his teammates, which really surprised the healer. All the rats stopped and sniffed at the power coming from Houston. They weren't risking moving forward. Houston asked if the healer could use his abilities now, but the dude warned us he was tapped out of mana, so he couldn't use his skills at full power. Houston used his absorption skill to funnel mana from the potion into the guy, but he thought it was a mana regen skill. The healer dropped to his knees, totally confused about who this guy was and where he got those abilities. He started apologizing to Houston, thinking he was some kind of god because of the skill. Houston wanted to tell him he was wrong, but knew the guy would be too embarrassed to even use his shield skill. The healer threw up a shield that blasted all the rats away from the team. Houston charged at the main rat monster, hoping to take it down right then and there. But the rat wouldn't let that happen, drained all the guy's mana, and kept attacking. Houston isn't one to use mana in a fight, and eventually, he still managed to take the monster down. After beating the monster, the guy unlocked a reward in the form of a roulette, and he scored a new skill. A giddy healer ran up to Houston, who'd just taken down the monster, stoked he was saved. He was blown away by the skills of the guy he mistakenly thought was a god, thanking our hero with eyes shining bright. Later, back at the Adventurers Guild, his buddies said they were heading back to their village tomorrow, giving up on the adventurer life. Once everyone cleared out, Houston decided to check out the loot he'd found inside the rat. At the artifact appraisal shop, the seller examined the item Houston brought him. He was floored and wanted the item for himself, not by buying it, but by swiping it, 'cause it was a big deal. So the seller decided to swap it out for something less valuable, hoping the hero wouldn't catch on before he left. After doing his dirty work, ready to sell the real find for a fortune, he told Houston the item was worth about 80,000 gold. Houston smelled something fishy and poured a potion on the artifact, one that reacts instantly with any blood. The knife he used to kill the monster reacted immediately with the potion, but the item from the monster didn't. The guy realized the seller swapped his find for something totally different and punched the cheat in anger. The seller's face was bruised from the hits, but Houston used his skills to cover his tracks, then introduced himself. The seller knew he shouldn't have tried to scam him, because you can't really pull one over on healers. He had to spill the whole truth about the artifact, but the bitter truth didn't exactly make him happy. He was not a fan. Houston was floored when he heard the real price, 6,400,000 gold. The seller was scared for his life, because the guy could have beaten him even worse for lying. Houston was stoked about the find, because it meant he could seriously level up his skills. He asked the seller to unlock the ring for him, which would give him more power, making any fight with monsters easier. After hitting up the artifact appraisal shop, Houston decided to grab a drink at the bar, but every table was taken. One of the guys sitting near where the main character was standing recognized him and invited him to his table. The guys started talking. They knew each other because they were both from another world, one where magic didn't even exist. Their conversation turned to star-level skills. Those are rare, and hardly anyone has them. But Houston's buddy remembered some dude who did have a skill like that. This guy was seriously powerful because he had a dark star ability, and he was hungry to get his hands on even more of them. His buddy figured a skill like that might be the key to getting them back home. Houston was blown away. He was desperate to get back to his own world, so he was going to find out everything he could about this star. The next day, our main character headed to the street market. He was offering his healing services, even accepting trades instead of gold. People walking by didn't really trust Houston. He seemed like a weirdo to them. A girl walked past who recognized him and laughed at him because he couldn't use his healing powers. Hearing that, the passers-by figured he was a con artist and cleared out, every last one of them. But one girl stayed behind, hoping to get help from the healer for a certain problem. She was just a regular person, and she wasn't sure if what she could offer would be enough. All she had was potatoes, no big money or valuable items to her name. But Houston reassured her that it was no problem, and the girl was relieved by his kindness. She showed him her wound, which she'd gotten while working in the fields with a tool. The girl was scared she was gonna die, 'cause she'd heard about a guy who got hurt the same way and got real sick, then kicked the bucket. Houston realized she was talking about lockjaw, a nasty disease that can really mess you up if you ain't got your shots, which they don't have in this world. The main character started examining the wound on the girl's arm, and she got all worried. What if it was something serious they couldn't fix? Using his skill, the guy saw it wasn't lockjaw, and there was nothing to sweat. The main character told the girl her wound wasn't serious, which she was relieved to hear. Houston gave her an ointment to heal her arm, but she was surprised, thinking it was some kind of potion. But the guy said it was just a regular balm and explained how to use it. Remembering the wound was bandaged with a dirty, old bandage, and she probably didn't have any clean ones, he paused. He used his skill, creating new and clean bandages from grass. The woman was really happy. She had no idea the guy could help her so quickly and skillfully. Seeing this, the other commoners, regular folks without skills, were blown away. Since the doctor accepted payment in trade, they wanted help too. They couldn't afford the big fees from the healers in the guild. For each person he healed, And there were quite a few, since everyone needs help, but not everyone can pay a guild healer. Houston got points. He was stoked that he could help ordinary people and get points for his work, which would help him unlock useful skills. The main character figured healing folks was way better and safer than fighting monsters. But while our hero was stoked about racking up points, he didn't see someone about to trash his potions. Turns out, it was some arrogant dude who called his shop garbage and laughed at the whole setup. He demanded Houston give him whatever potion he had brewed up. The main character realized he was dealing with a nobleman, but he couldn't figure out why the guy was in a dump like this. After this guy's little rampage, all Houston had left that wasn't smashed was some bomb. This stuck-up, cocky noble, name's Richard, offered our main character a job with his family. Houston was clueless why such a high and mighty family would need a nobody like him. The nobleman's bodyguard tossed down a bag with an ingredient for a cure for the Tejas plague. Tejas used to be a beautiful place, but now it oozes poison. The ruler there fought monsters to free his land, but he failed and got infected himself. Houston realized he was the only one who could make the bomb right now. Richard said if the main character could impress his father, he'd get a much better shop. He was proud of his family and their wealth, and said Houston could get their blessing. The nobleman smirked, already thinking the guy would jump at the deal. But the main character turned down the amazing offer, because he didn't want to work with that family. Richard didn't take that answer well, and he was totally thrown off. Furious, he started yelling at the main character and throwing his father's name around. Houston shut the nobleman down with his refusal, because he didn't like the guy's arrogant attitude. Their conversation was interrupted by a kid saying he needed Houston's help, which got both their attention. His crippled sister was on his back, her arm wrapped in a bloody bandage, and she looked really bad. The scythe sliced the girl's finger down to the bone, almost clean off. The doctor said they needed to flush the wound because the scythe was filthy and the girl's brother was freaking out about his sister. You could see the fear and worry etched all over his face. He didn't want to lose her. Just to stir the pot, Richard started mocking the fact that the potion maker, Houston, wouldn't be able to do anything for the wound. Meanwhile, the girl was getting worse, and the pain in her hand was absolutely brutal. According to Richard, only a healer like him could possibly fix something like this. The main character begged the noble to help the girl and reattach her finger, but the guy wanted an apology for Houston's disrespect and for Houston to swear loyalty to his family. Houston wasn't having any of that. He just scoffed at Richard's ego trip. The main character wasn't about to bow down. He decided to handle it himself, reattach the finger, and help the girl. Knowing it was a lost cause, Richard bet his lucky necklace on it anyway. Houston, full of confidence, proposed that if he succeeded, Richard would treat commoners for free for 3 days. The nobleman wasn't thrilled with the offer, but he agreed to the terms. The main character focused his magical thread using his skill, hoping it would be enough to reattach the finger. He began to reattach the finger, using his abilities to ensure everything went smoothly. The magical threads instantly started to repair the finger, guided by the main character's skills. The operation was long, but he even managed to repair the ligaments in the finger. At one point during the operation, Houston felt like something was off. He was starting to feel sick and felt like he was about to collapse. Turns out, his stamina was running out. He might not have enough to finish the operation. The exhausted doctor finally finished his work, even though he was completely drained. The girl's brother was crying tears of joy, while the nobleman was fuming over his defeat. Houston asked the girl to wiggle her finger, just to make sure it was working right. The young girl's finger worked perfectly, doing everything it should, and there wasn't even a scar from the stitches. The main character reminded Richard about his promise, which made him panic. He realized there was no way out of it now. He'd have to treat citizens for free and give up his necklace. The nobleman threw the necklace at Houston with all his might and anger and hurried away. The girl's brother thanked the doctor and wasn't sure if Richard would keep his promise. The guy was sure the nobleman wouldn't be able to weasel out of fulfilling the agreement and asked the teenagers to spread the rumors about it. That evening at the inn, a worker asked about the buzz that was going around town. Houston looked like death warmed over. He looked exhausted and drained from the day. She said that the head of the Yarev family is treating people for free in the town square. The girl got worried that the doctor would have fewer patients now, but Houston said it was more important to him that as many people as possible get help. The hotel worker was pleasantly surprised and touched by the healer's kindness. She's glad the main character cared about people. Remembering the potato the first client gave him, the main character gave it to the girl. The thrilled worker happily took the potato and planned to cook something tasty for Houston to replenish his energy. But no food could help the guy, because after work he spun that wheel and it really screwed him over. Among a bunch of useless prizes, there was one useful one, or so it seemed to the main character at first glance. A life force crystal and an inventory expansion. Houston thought those would be really useful to have. The main character examined the new crystal. It looked rich and powerful, but he was distracted by a guy, the same one who, like Houston, ended up in this world by accident. Turns out this dude had an item that could power up any crystal in the world. This good-hearted guy decided to give his item to our main character, and Houston thanked him for the gift. Then the main character's acquaintance noticed something on Houston. There was a ring on his hand, the very one he was planning to sell at the artifact shop. The guy recommended a good weapon shop to our main character, a place where he could sell anything he found or buy something new. When Houston walked into the shop, he was surprised. The place wasn't half bad, pretty legit and chill. The shopkeeper greeted our main character, and Houston said he was there to sell a few items. The first item he handed over to the shopkeeper to check out, a necklace of luck, turned out to have a crack in the crystal. It dawned on Houston that the crack must have happened when Richard chucked the necklace. But the shopkeeper cheered up our hero by saying that even in its current state, he could sell the necklace for 3 million gold. After that, he asked about the ring, the one on his finger, which turned out to be super rare. The shopkeeper asked him to wait while he checked recent transaction records, so Houston decided to look around. He wanted to find some useful weapons that would come in handy fighting those nasty monsters. And crossbow caught his eye, and he decided to check out how effective it was. When he scanned the weapon, a message told him to get that crossbow, no matter what. Houston didn't get why he needed it, and what's more, he didn't understand why the message seemed like it was sent by a person. He started thinking that someone or something was watching him, keeping tabs on his whole life in this world. Lost in thought and pondering this, our hero jumped when the shopkeeper called him over. The main character asked about the crossbow, wondering if it was anything special. Turns out this crossbow, and we're talking a freaky crossbow here, is a seriously powerful and prized weapon in this world. The vendor also mentioned that this crossbow comes with a freaky satchel. Apparently, if you toss something into the satchel, it instantly turns into bolts for the crossbow, and you can reuse them a bunch of times. When Houston heard the price, 15 million gold, he knew there was no way he could afford it. The seller was willing to knock off 1 million gold if our main man bought the freaky crossbow right then and there. Houston hesitated and asked how much he'd get for the stuff he'd brought in to sell just a few minutes ago. But the price for all his gear wasn't even close to enough to buy the crossbow. Even if he threw in all his supplies, he still wouldn't have enough for the weapon. He remembered that entity pushing him to get the crossbow by any means necessary, and decided to ask it for help. But of course, nobody answered him or gave him any money. He wasn't surprised. The seller suggested registering the purchase and reserving the freaky crossbow if the guy didn't have the cash on hand right now. The main character took the salesman up on his offer and was super grateful for the guy's understanding. When Houston asked to borrow some cash from his buddy, he realized the dude wasn't exactly rolling in it. The guy was sure they'd find a way back home no matter what, which wasn't something Houston could say for himself. Later, back at the Adventurers Guild, the main character decided to pick up a healer quest to make some extra dough. The clerk told him he couldn't take a quest like that since he didn't have a healer's badge, but the guy just calmed her down, saying he was just browsing and wasn't actually going to grab one. The girl glanced at the sheets in the main character's hand and noticed all the quests Houston was holding were already in progress. The main character decided to help the guy out with his quest, since he's pretty good at that kind of thing. At the inn, a worker greeted him and asked what he was doing there. Houston was just looking for someone. He went into the room and noticed some people. One of them was a priest, who had already started the job. The guy was trying to heal the girl's leg with holy light, but she really needed a proper healer. Meanwhile, our main dude used his skill to get the lowdown on her injury. The priest was ready to go all out with his abilities, determined to complete his mission and help the injured girl. But Houston stopped him, which totally threw him for a loop. He wasn't expecting any outsiders here. Our hero introduced himself as a healer and told everyone the priest's treatment wouldn't do squat in this case, which ticked off the priest, who thought he was hot stuff, figuring he could fix the problem without any side effects. The injured girl's friend was pissed that the dude was interfering with the priest's healing. She was worried sick about her friend, who was in terrible shape and could barely move. The girl tried to kick Houston out, thinking he was just barging in and distracting the priest. Our main guy just smirked at the girl's stubbornness, knowing full well the healer was wasting their time. The priest kept trying to heal the big wound, but he still couldn't figure out why the girl wasn't getting any better, even after all his efforts. He kept using holy light magic, but it wasn't doing a damn thing. The sick girl wasn't improving, and the bleeding in her leg wouldn't stop, no matter what the priest did. The girl's partner was clueless why none of the healers she'd brought in could fix her friend's problem. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she was starting to think there was nothing they could do, and her friend was only going to get worse. The injured girl asked them to call the main character, since he knew all along the priest wouldn't be able to help. But her friend wasn't so sure about Houston. She thought he was shady and weird, especially after he barged into their room with that crazy claim. Even so, she wanted to save her partner and friend, so she had to ask the main character for help and went off to find him. After the girl went downstairs, she asked a staff member if she'd seen the main character. The friendly and welcoming staff member pointed to a nearby table, where Houston was sitting with a smug and innocent look on his face. The girl walked up to the guy and asked if he knew what the deal was and why the priest's powers weren't working. But when Houston called her out for coming to him for help after she'd rudely kicked him out, she got flustered. The girl started making excuses, saying she'd misunderstood the guy's intentions because of something that was said. She bowed down to Houston. She needed his help and had to apologize and beg for her colleague's life. The girl was worried that the main character would refuse after all the crap she'd talked about him before. Meanwhile, the doctor was already heading over to the patient to examine the wound, figure out what was causing the bleeding, and fix her leg. She breathed a sigh of relief because she thought Houston just wouldn't want to do her the favor. The priest was tired and confused, but he knew Houston hadn't come for nothing. The main character chewed out the priest, which embarrassed him, and he clearly wasn't happy about Houston showing up again. The man started bragging about his skills with toxins, guaranteeing the girl wasn't poisoned. Houston didn't appreciate the boasting and said the poison wasn't the real issue. He didn't wait for the guy to answer, turning to the girl to ask her name. The injured young lady was called Velena. The main character started examining the wound, and Velena explained how she got hurt. Houston asked, just to get the facts straight, if the monster's wound was causing her any discomfort or pain. But Velena, without hesitating, replied that the wound wasn't causing her any pain at all. The priest was shocked by this answer and exclaimed, "Why hadn't she mentioned that before?" The man started guessing that the problem was some kind of dark energy, which left a mark on her leg that couldn't be healed. The main character shut down the priest's theory, warning him that it wasn't dark energy at all. He used his absorption skill, and the potion enveloped the girl's leg, helping Velena stop the bleeding. Everyone there was amazed by the main character's actions. No one understood what he was doing or how he did it. The bleeding from Velena's wound stopped instantly, and the priest was in total shock. Houston used a potion he'd whipped up himself, specifically to deal with this kind of bug. Velena was confused. What bug was the doc even talking about? She got bit by a bat. The main guy told them to take a closer look, see if they could spot a tiny bite mark. The girl said that neither she nor her partner got their wounds treated right away. Her partner chimed in, her wound was on her arm, and then it hit her. Only Velina had contact with water near the bite. The main guy explained that bugs in the water, that got into her leg, were what kept the wound from closing. The priest finally got what was going on, and why his healing touch wasn't working. The partner was already celebrating, thinking it was all over, and Velina would finally be okay. But Houston was sure of it. This wasn't just any bug, and it wouldn't go down easy. He sliced open Velina's bite, and she freaked out, totally confused about what was happening. Something started forming in her leg, getting bigger and bigger. Out of the knife wound crawled a freaking huge monster. The thing crashed to the floor, pissed that it had been exposed and ripped away from its blood meal. Houston said they had to kill that thing ASAP before it messed them all up. This leech monster was growing like crazy, and the priest had no clue how to handle it. The leech bolted, trying to escape into the sewers so it wouldn't get killed and could keep feeding on people. Houston yelled at everyone to grab their weapons and help him take down the monster. He charged at the leech with his knife, swinging it, ready to cut the thing to ribbons. But the creature didn't even flinch, not a scratch. It was seriously strong and tough. Houston wasn't surprised by the leech's strength. The thing had been feeding on human blood for a whole week. The leech slipped past the main character, desperate to get away from prying eyes. Houston was shocked at how fast it was. One of the girls ran towards the monster, trying to stop it from escaping into the sewer. She jumped to the top of a cabinet, grabbing the edges as the leech raced towards the manhole cover. The girl thought she'd killed the monster and said she wouldn't let the creature that almost killed her friend get away. But not only was the leech not dead, it got even stronger and angrier from that attack, really freaking the girl out. Houston kicked the monster away with all his might, sending it flying into the wall. The girl got spooked by the sudden movement and covered her eyes. The main character kept attacking the enraged leech, plunging a knife into its throat, but the thing wouldn't quit. The guy realized that to beat this disgusting monster, this giant blood-sucking leech, he had to keep attacking until it lost all its blood and dried up. The monster jumped back from Houston, and he noticed that the leech, having lost a lot of the blood it had sucked up, had shrunk in size. That bloodthirsty beast decided to smash through the hotel window and escape into the main sewer line, where it'll be impossible to reach. Our main guy hustled and jumped out the window after the leech, grabbing a green potion to help him take down the monster. Houston chugged the liquid, and the giant leech froze up from the magic potion, letting out a screech. The main character charged at the monster full speed, a knife in his hand ready to strike. He swung his knife, aiming for the leech, managing to land a few cuts on the bloodthirsty creature's body. The main character was about to land the finishing blow, which would solve his monster problem, but the knife snapped. Houston was totally confused. He definitely wasn't expecting that. A piece of the knife flew right past his face, but just then, the priest pulled out a magic book and used his skill, Chains of Light, to stop the creature. The leech was trapped in golden chains, screaming and writhing in pain inflicted by the man. The priest held the chain he'd just created, telling Houston to attack quickly because he couldn't hold the monster for long. Suddenly, someone yelled, and our hero found a brand new, super sharp knife in his hands. He was totally caught off guard. The girl whose friend was getting drained by that leech handed Houston the knife, telling him to use it since his broke. But just then, the bloodthirsty leech managed to break free from its chains. The priest couldn't hold the monster any longer. Without a second thought, our hero charged at the newly freed leech, knife in hand. He sliced that monster to ribbons. The leech was dead. It couldn't regenerate anymore. Chunks of the giant leech's body splattered on the ground. The hero picked up a piece of the now dead monster, saying it was all thanks to the priest for holding the leech back as long as he did. After that, Velina looked at her leg, which the doctor had stitched up. She was amazed someone could actually sew up a wound like that. The girl burst into tears of joy, thanking the hero for making her okay and saving her from, well, you know. Houston smiled sweetly at Valina's words and said he was just doing his job as a healer. The main character walked up to the priest and suggested he head back to the guild and report that things didn't exactly go according to plan. This dude was seriously pissed, like, why the hell did he have to do this? Houston, grinning like a maniac, told him it was so he could get his reward, since he did all the heavy lifting. Later, the priest slunk back to the Adventurers Guild and confessed he screwed up the quest. The guy went pale, but admitted he couldn't handle it. The guild girl was totally shocked by that announcement. She couldn't wrap her head around how a priest could botch such a simple job. The Adventurers Guild employee was wondering how one of the church's top-tier priests could fail a mission that seemed like a walk in the park. The injured girl's friend and partner asked if she could cancel the quest, since it wasn't completed. The employee canceled the quest and refunded half the payment, according to guild rules. The main character was watching the whole thing nearby. He knew he couldn't take quests from the guild, but nothing stopped him from snagging canceled ones. People judged him and pointed fingers because he butted in on other people's quests and stole them. But Houston didn't give a damn what they said. If they couldn't actually help the sick person, why even take the quest in the first place? That's how he saw it. After all that, the girl, the one who canceled the job, just handed over the payout to our main guy. Houston remembered the knife she gave him and figured he should return it, but she told him to keep it. The dude wasn't sure he should take something so important, but it was her way of apologizing for kicking him out of her room. Our hero was walking down the street, tossing the bag of cash in the air. Now he just needed to find 2 million gold to buy that crossbow. Feeling lucky, he decided to spin the roulette wheel 5 times, hoping to score something worthwhile. But the first 4 spins were duds. Each time, all he got was gold. The last one was a little better, though. He got a new skill out of it, which might come in handy later. After that unlucky roulette run, our main character headed to the apothecary. He went inside the shack. The apothecary worker was busy and told the guy that if he needed anything, he could just grab it. Hearing that he wasn't a customer, but a seller, she got interested and asked him to show her what he had. The main character slapped pieces of the monster, a leech he'd recently sliced up, onto the counter in front of the shopkeeper. The pharmacy worker examined the leech, mentioning that because of all the cuts on the monster's body, the price wouldn't be great. But the girl took a closer look at the monster's maw. The teeth she saw sparked her interest in buying the leech. The main character asked about the price of this monster, and was shocked to hear that the monster he'd butchered was worth 3 million gold. She asked Houston to look at the leech's teeth, explaining that they're usually black, but these were white, indicating the monster's rarity. The girl was stoked that the remains of such a rare monster could be used in the creation of artifacts. The main character agreed to sell his catch. The price of 3 million gold made him grin. They closed the deal, and the worker handed over the promised sum for the rare monster. After the deal, Houston hurried to the weapons shop, bursting through the doors with a sack of cash in his hands. The guy slammed the sack onto the table, right in front of the seller, who was surprised to see a customer so late. The main character snagged his precious crossbow, stoked he could buy this weapon so fast. He sent the weapon to his inventory so the entity, the one who wanted the crossbow, could contact him. A message from the entity popped up on the screen, and the main character was pumped that it worked. But suddenly, weird stuff started happening to the screen. The dude was totally confused. He had no clue what was going down. Figuring it was just some glitch, the main character got pissed and started yelling into the air, demanding the entity show itself. The screen reappeared in front of him, but this time it agreed to answer 5 questions that Houston would ask. Back when the main character first landed in this other world, the Azul continent, a lot of people who arrived with him got wasted, but some survived, and they started arguing. Some wanted to go back, while others were cool with the new world. The main character stepped up with his own plan. He suggested everyone find a job that fit their skills, and those who wanted to return should try to find a way to do it. Houston figured that the entity, the one watching him, could give him the answer to his question, how to get back to his own world. The hero's first question was simple. He wanted to know if this entity was the one who transported them to the Azul continent, to which he got a positive response. Enraged by what he heard, he hurried to ask the entity's name and why it did this, but the answer on the screen was short. Just the word, yes. It dawned on Houston that this screen could only answer with two words, yes or no, and couldn't answer any other questions. The very next question he wanted to know was if they could find a way back to Earth, which was affirmative. After learning that no one had ever been able to return to Earth, the main character decided to try a trick. He wrote two choices in his book. He figured that since the screen only had two answers, it could choose either the first or second option, where the first was yes and the second was no. He got the first option to his question. The hero learned that the entity sent them to this world to obtain items and points. The guy used his last question and learned that they needed to get points. Houston was pissed at the fact that some entity snatched them from Earth so people could be slaves, grinding for points. Even though he used all his questions, the guy decided to ask one last thing. He wanted to know if this entity was the god of the Azul continent. But instead of the long-awaited answer, the guy had all his accumulated points taken away, and he was super surprised. The enraged main character didn't expect that kind of move, demanding all the points he'd worked so hard to earn back. Houston decided to take out his frustrations on whoever was on the other side of the screen, pulling regular people into his world. Just then, a new quest popped up on the screen, offered in exchange for all the points that were taken from him. The main character realized the entity feeds on points. The absorbed points help it control the system. Wiped out the next morning, the hero was a mess, with bags under his eyes that looked like they'd multiplied. For completing the Crossbow Freak quest, the main character got a coupon for 5 free roulette spins. From the spins, Houston got stat boosts and a new skill related to the freaks, the ones the crossbow was named after. While the main character was eating breakfast, an old acquaintance walked in. He looked just as beat as Houston did. The guy greeted the main character cheerfully, happy to see Houston. The main character explained everything he'd managed to find out from the roulette, which totally blew the guy's mind. The dude was bawling his eyes out, grabbing at Houston's robe. He was desperate to get back home too. Houston explained they needed to rack up 5,000 points to complete the mission and get closer to the truth. How to get back where they belong. The main guy said he could beat someone up and heal them repeatedly, racking up points that way. He asked John, that was the guy's name, to help with the mission and be his punching bag, someone he could heal. Houston thought it was a solid plan, asking another isekai dude to help with the mission to get back home. John grinned and agreed to the deal, ready to take the risk for the main character. Houston was sure the guy would go for it. He knew he was a good dude at heart. Meanwhile, John grabbed a knife and looked like he was about to hurt himself. Houston didn't immediately get what he was doing. He swung the knife and sliced his arm open, clean through. The pain was off the charts. The main character said self-inflicted wounds don't count towards the system score. No points for that. After that, the guys headed to the Adventurers Guild. They needed a monster-related quest, since wounds from those things counted as points. A guild employee greeted them, all smiles, until she realized it was him, the quest wrecker. In her eyes, the main character looked like a villain, back at the guild, again, to sabotage another job. She was seriously ticked off and decided she wasn't going to let Houston ruin anyone else's mission. Meanwhile, the guys went over to the quest board and found a couple that could help them out. The main character and his buddy pointed out that there were way more monster quests than usual. The employee walked up to them, and John jumped. He was startled by the girl suddenly appearing behind them. She explained that because of peak monster season, the guild was regularly posting extermination quests, and they'd even set up an adventurer's camp for it. The main character was stoked about that, since there'd definitely be people at the camp who needed a healer, so he agreed to take on a quest. The guild employee was relieved she'd managed to prevent a mission from getting trashed. With their mission locked in, the main character and John headed for the adventurer camp. A young dude named Val greeted them, stoked to have new allies, and laid out the reward system for monster kills. Val mentioned most monsters were harmless, but some were seriously dangerous, and told the guys to watch their backs. That intel didn't faze our main character or his partner. They were feeling confident. The guys ran into some massive bloodthirsty creatures, iron moles, with claws that were huge and made of solid iron. Houston realized these monsters had been tailing them since they left the adventurer camp. Busting out his new weapon, the freak crossbow, the guy landed a fatal shot on one of the moles. John spotted a monster trying to ambush the main character, bursting from underground, ready to shred Houston to ribbons. The iron mole unleashed its massive razor-sharp claws, primed to obliterate anything in their path. John jumped in front of the creature's claws, shielding the main character with his own body, taking the full brunt of the attack. 4 arrows slammed into the guy's back. He totally wasn't expecting that and went into shock instantly. But Houston, who shot those arrows, had warned him he'd made a potion arrow that could heal him up. The fight went on. The main guy and his partner kept battling and won, clearing the area of those mole things. When they brought the dead iron moles back to camp, Val was blown away by how many monsters they'd taken down. The other adventurers were stunned by the guy's skills. They couldn't figure out what these two did, or how they wasted those monsters so easily. But a couple of people decided to be jerks and noticed the bandage on his arm. John was pissed that they were treating them like that. A vein throbbed in his neck, and his eyes narrowed. The main guy and his partner sat down to eat, and John was still fuming. He asked why Houston wasn't reacting. Houston, with a smile, said dealing with those kinds of people wasn't worth it. Soon enough, they'd be crawling back for help. Chewing his food, his partner didn't get what the main guy was on about. He didn't even realize who he was talking about at first. A wounded guy stumbled into the adventurers' camp, begging the healers for help. John told Houston this was a sweet way to rack up some extra points for the quest. The injured dude was writhing in pain from a blow to his arm, screaming and shaking like a leaf. One of the guys who was giving the main character and his buddy a hard time earlier now turned his gaze on them. He recognized them as the same guys he'd been mocking, and John's blood started to boil all over again. The main character headed towards the injured guy to help, but the jerk who was mocking them tried to stop him with words. Houston fired up his skills again, trying to figure out what was really wrong with the guy. He felt the patient's big, trembling hand and reported that some kind of wild animal had done the biting. John knew what had caused the wound. The guy was suffering from the bites of a ganchai beloto, causing the pain and paralysis. The main character pulled out his knife, ready to start helping. Like always, he needed to cut the wound open first. The gash revealed rotten flesh, seriously freaking everyone out. Houston decided to use the crossbow on the guy who was laughing at them, the one who called them jerks and weirdos. The main character asked his partner, Jack, to hold the crowd back so they wouldn't get in the doctor's way. The weirdo's arrows instantly pierced the sick guy's body. These arrows contained a potion that would help him heal. The camp citizens were terrified. Nobody understood how a guy calling himself a healer could just off someone like that. But luckily, or unluckily, the arrows shot into his body only healed the guy, leaving no trace. Everyone there was shocked by this crazy stunt. Nobody thought arrows could actually heal. Houston said the Bellato hounds are weak against air. If they'd healed the guy without closing the wound, everything would have been fine. John accused the other healer of closing the sick guy's wound, blocking any chance of healing him. The main character, grinning, confirmed what his buddy said, and even accused the healer of being a few fries short of a happy meal. The dude went beet red, totally mortified that some guy, the one he'd been mocking no less, figured out what caused his injury so easily. Burning with shame, the guy bolted, trying to get away from the main character and John. He was not digging how things were going down. Meanwhile, the injured guy came to and thanked Houston for helping him out. John thought it was weird that this guy went on a mission all by himself, especially at night. Houston knelt down on one knee and asked the guy how he ended up alone in the woods. He explained that a pack of those balado hounds attacked, and his team got separated. He freaked out and thought he was the only one left alive. John had never seen or heard of those monsters attacking in huge packs like that. The main character guessed that if that's not supposed to happen, then it's probably because some rare monster showed up, one that might be able to control the minds of its own kind. Houston and his partner went looking for the rest of the injured guy's team, and they heard some strange noises. The main character asked his partner for the lamp, and he quickly handed it over so he could get a look at the creatures making all the racket. What they saw was a pack of savage balado hounds tearing into an unarmed kid. Houston whipped up some freak arrows and blasted those monsters, dropping them like flies. They were out cold. The main character ran to the scared guy, who was shaking like a leaf. He barely managed to stammer out a thank you to his savior. John, shining his flashlight on the clearing, was stunned by what he saw. A ton of human corpses were scattered on the ground. He called out to Houston, his voice trembling. All the bodies lying there had been there for quite a while. They'd been decomposing for some time. John figured it wasn't normal for balado hounds to collect bodies just to hoard old meat. Houston's only conclusion was that a rare kind of undead, a decomposed balado hound, was the one eating the rotten flesh. Undead meant a creature that could move using dark magic, even though it was dead. Just then, a pack of monsters flew at top speed towards the terrified guy on the side, but John blocked their path, protecting the poor kid, swinging his sword like a madman. One of those creatures ambushed Houston's partner from the side. John sensed something was wrong, but it was too late to defend himself. The main character yelled at his buddy to duck. He was going to attack that thing. Magic arrows flew past the guy's head and slammed into the body of a balado hound, killing it instantly. After taking out the monster, the main character shot arrows with a potion at his partner. Grinning, he said it was just a simple vaccination, but John told him to give a heads up next time he pulled a stunt like that. Continuing to fight and kill monsters, Houston turned his gaze to the main monster, who was just standing there calmly. He couldn't figure out what that freak was planning. The main character had a feeling it was waiting for its pack to die. With its bark, the creature summoned even more of its brethren, who relentlessly tried to kill the main character. They wanted to get closer to the main, rare monster, but the other creatures were getting in the way, not letting them move an inch. John decided to use his skill, mass aggro, to draw all the creatures' attention to himself. Saying he believed in Houston and that he probably wouldn't make it, he took off like a shot, drawing the pack away from our main guy. Houston dove at the rare creature, hunting for the relic. 'Cause if you snatch the relic from the monster, it's out of the fight. Without a second thought, or a shred of guilt, our hero sliced open the creature's throat where the relic was stashed. He figured this was his shot. To finish off the magical beast for good, he was going to put it down with a final crossbow bolt. Just then, another wolf leaped out of the bushes, sinking its fangs deep into our hero's arm. The severed hand, crossbow and all, went flying, leaving Houston disarmed and, a little short-handed. The monster turned towards our hero, enraged that he tried to steal its precious relic. The beast opened its jaws, trying to swallow Houston whole, thinking it'd win by eating the guy. But our main man activated his skill, 'cause he ain't one to give up easy, summoning a freak crossbow. He fired freak bolts straight into the bloodthirsty wolf's maw, and even with one arm, he could do everything perfectly with the other, since he was ambidextrous. Both his hands were equally skilled. After saying, "Die, you mangy mutt," the monster kicked the bucket. Couldn't do jack anymore, 'cause it was lights out. After taking down that tough creature, he wanted to heal up and reattach his arm, but couldn't find the damn thing. The kid who was almost Monster Chow a minute ago brought the main character his arm. He offered to help his savior. The kid wanted to patch Houston up, But the main guy told him to look over there. He could handle his own boo-boos. In the pile of dead bodies and animal remains, people were screaming. They were on death's door and begging for help. While the kid was helping the survivors, the main character went looking for his buddy, John. John was lying on the ground, covered in dead wolves. But the dude was okay, just beat from all the running. Houston's partner saw that his friend had lost an arm. He wasn't sweating it, knew it wasn't a huge deal for him, but told him not to do that again. Houston suggested they head back to camp, 'cause now they had a ton of injured people to help. Back at the adventurers' camp, our main guy got to patching himself up, or rather, stitching his arm back together. With some quick moves and a magic thread, the dude fixed his limb right up, good as new. John wondered why he didn't take help from that guy they rescued, but Houston didn't like relying on other healers. Someone interrupted the guys, shouting that the priests Houston had requested were here. Saying goodbye to his buddy, our hero threw on a robe and headed over to meet the priests. Priest Carl from the Ivor Church came to greet him. He was all smiles and polite. Houston could tell right away he was dealing with a priest. He said hello and introduced himself. Hearing the main character's name, the other priests who came with Carl started getting jumpy. Carl snapped at his buddies, told them to shut their traps and not interrupt his chat with Houston. The young priest was friendly and courteous to Houston, apologized for the others, and said he'd heard about him from another priest. Houston realized they were talking about the priest who couldn't heal the girl at the hotel. The main character led the priests and people from the camp to the massacre site. The aura there was thick with negativity. The young priest, Carl, ordered his team to split into groups, one to cleanse the area of dark mana and another to search the area. Meanwhile, a third team was to take the dead bodies back to camp, and the fourth was tasked with burning the compromised bodies. The priests acknowledged the order, and everyone went to carry out their assigned tasks. Carl asked the main character to take a look at a rare undead monster, and Houston agreed. The creature looked horrifying. It smelled of rotten flesh. The priest found the thing repulsive, especially the dark mana clinging to it. He asked the main character if he could donate this rare monster specimen to their church. Houston didn't understand why the church would want a dead and rotting magical monster's body. But the young priest explained that the church wanted to study the monster to understand what caused the undead outbreak. In exchange for the bloody monster's dead body, Carl offered the main character an item. This item was holy water, created independently by the Ivor Church. The guy working at the camp was super surprised, while Houston didn't even realize what kind of water it was. Carl explained that the holy water is considered that way because it's placed on the altar, where priests pray over it. The water was filled with mighty and divine power, capable of wiping out hundreds of undead. The dude from the adventurer camp suggested the main character hand over the corpse and take the water, since you can't buy it with money. Houston figured that since he destroyed the artifact while destroying the monster, he'd be at a loss. But since this opportunity came up, it's a chance. A chance to get something worthwhile, so he gladly accepted the priest's offer and handed over the wolf's corpse. The young priest, Carl, thanked the main character from the bottom of his heart for his understanding and for defeating the monster. The main character was woken up by a scream in the morning, and he was furious that someone wouldn't let him sleep in after such a tough day. The scream came from Val, who was freaking out and begging the main character to wake up already. Turns out, the head honcho of the Adventurers Guild showed up at camp to see Houston. The main character wasn't really getting why he was here, he just wanted to crash and get some serious rest. The guild leader's name was Rain, and he'd heard about what Houston did and was super proud. Houston was flattered that the big boss himself bothered to come to camp for him, and Rain said he couldn't not come after that monster takedown. But the main character didn't buy the guy's words for a second. He was boiling inside, but trying to keep it cool. He knew this guy was just a puffed-up nobody riding his family's coattails, and couldn't believe someone like that was even looking at Houston. Rain brought a gift for the main character, golden mushroom extract, which totally surprised the camp worker. Val filled Houston in on what this stuff does, explaining that they use these mushrooms to make stamina potions. Golden mushrooms were rare as hell, since they boosted a person's max stamina. That last line stuck in the hero's head. He knew it was exactly what he needed. He chugged that miracle potion down in one go, and bam! His stamina jumped up 3%. The hero was stoked about the branch manager's gift. He wiped his mouth and thanked Mr. Rain. Manager Rain was thrilled the hero liked it. He was about to say something when Houston tossed the empty vial where the potion had been and cut him off. "What's the real reason you're here, Rain?" The hero suggested they cut the crap and guessed, "You're here for the sacred dawn water, right?" The manager was caught off guard by Houston's sharp reply. He wondered how the kid figured it out so fast. But then, the guy was pleased that the hero was so quick on the uptake and offered a deal, really emphasizing the word dimensional traveler during his spiel. The hero was in shock. How could this guy know he was from another world? Only other dimensional travelers knew that. Manager Rain twisted the knife, telling Houston it sucks being a dimensional traveler when you're not treated right. Because nobody knows where these dimension hoppers come from, even if they're super talented, they get treated like dirt. The main character was totally lost, didn't have a clue what the guy was on about. Ryan offered what he thought was a killer deal. He gets the Dawn Holy Water, and in return, Houston gets the healer's mark, and his family gets sponsored. The main character was floored by the offer. It was almost too good to be true. But even so, he said guild rules meant he couldn't become an official healer. The guy just laughed, like his family can make anything happen. If the main character gets the Rain family's stamp of approval, he could become a royal healer. The guy was already picturing Houston saying yes, and him getting a place way nicer than where he was living now. The main character stroked his chin, thinking it over, then turned down the amazing offer. Rain was stunned by the answer, totally thrown for a loop, so much so that he dropped his teacup. Houston smirked and said he didn't need to make a deal like that to earn people's respect. But the guy was determined to get what he wanted, so he offered a sponsorship. Said his family's backing could open up a lot of doors. Our main guy wasn't having it. He knew Ryan's influence in his family wasn't all that, and a deal like that spelled trouble. Ryan, the head honcho, was furious at Houston's rejection. He started yelling and saying some pretty nasty stuff to the guy. After that run-in, our hero met up with his buddy John, and he noticed something weird in his hand. Turns out, it was a ruby that boosts attack power, a reward he'd just scored. Our main character was stoked for his friend, happy he'd landed something that could really help him out. The guys' chat was cut short by a huge bell ringing and people shouting about some disaster. The adventurer camp was under attack by monsters. The voice was begging for adventurers to help defend it. Most of the adventurers bolted to answer the call, rushing past our hero and his friend, who decided to join the fray too. Monsters were swarming the adventurers, and more kept showing up every minute. The main character jumped in to help defend the camp, grabbing his trusty freak crossbow and blasting those monsters. John, meanwhile, used his skills to get up close and personal, slicing and dicing those things. Just then, Houston spotted a massive bear. It attacked the adventurer, tearing up his back with its claws. The adventurers from the guild were doing everything they could to stop the bear, but their weapons just weren't cutting it. John figured out that the stone weapons couldn't hurt the bear, but the main character wasn't giving up. Houston crafted arrows from the claws of that mole rat he'd taken down recently. These arrows were as tough as that monster used to be. The newly made arrow instantly pierced the bear's hide. All that was left was to finish the beast off. John widened the spot where the arrow hit, making it easier to deal with the thing. Houston ran forward and leaped over the bear, the sun behind him blinding the monster. Using his throwing skill, the main character hurled his knife at the huge beast, and it dropped lifeless to the ground. John was stoked they were heroes, that they'd beaten the monster. Meanwhile, Houston fired up the roulette. His buddy tried to stop him from spinning, 'cause he knew it was going to be a bust, but Houston was hoping for the best. But the roulette results were a total letdown. He was bummed, and John was all, I tried to tell you. Just then, Val called out to the guys, yelling for Houston and John to hold up a sec. The guy was winded, catching his breath. Houston asked what he needed, and Val just thanked them for their hard work. Val, from the camp, gave Houston and John a special reward from the camp, a tavern voucher. The guys were surprised. Taking the gift, the guys headed to the bar, thanks to Val's voucher, to celebrate their victory with a drink. At that moment, someone in the bar spotted Houston. He caught the doctor's attention. Houston was surprised, but when he looked over, he recognized the young guy. It was Tucker, the guy the doctor had fixed up his ankle. He was stoked to see him. John asked the main character if he knew this guy, and Houston, holding a glass of booze, said yeah. Tucker was grateful for the doc's help and brought him a bag of cash, since he didn't have any money to pay for the treatment last time. The main character was surprised and remembered he hadn't charged the guy for treating his hand that time, just the sword. Houston handed Tucker the sword he'd been keeping in his inventory, and the guy flinched. Tucker was stoked to have his favorite, most prized sword back in his hands. He was crying tears of joy and hugging the weapon. The three guys were sitting together, talking, and Tucker asked if the main character and his partner had some free time. The guy held out a quest sheet. It said they needed to assemble a squad to go into a dungeon portal that had recently popped up near the settlement. Tucker was bummed because he couldn't go on the mission. He had a debt he needed to pay back. John said you shouldn't borrow money from the guild. The main character asked his partner what they should do. John agreed to head into the dungeon. Tucker was beaming. He knew these guys were good people and would gladly help him out. He could count on them. 3 days later, the main character and John headed out on a mission, and Houston said he'd scored something worthwhile. John was in shock, totally surprised that his buddy managed to snag something that could actually help him out. The item in question? A new skill, one that lets you recover a used arrow and put it right back in your inventory. The main character explained that he'd met up with the healer the guys rescued in the forest, and he'd given him a blessing. Houston decided to push his luck, since his luck stat had gone up after the blessing, and he pulled the skill from the gacha. Then the guys met Tina, the girl who gave Tucker the quest slip, and also, get this, his cousin. The main character introduced himself, but John was bummed. He wanted to rake in as much gold as possible, but it didn't look like it was going to happen. Besides Tina, there were a few other people on the new team, a fighter, a priestess, and a mage. The mage decided to call John out on his outfit, and he was all puffed up, not understanding what she didn't like about his clothes. But this disagreement in the new team was cut short by another teammate, a guy named Ale. John figured Ale was the squad leader, but this other dude snapped that he was in charge. Everyone was set, and the team dove into the portal, ready to hit the monster dungeon. The team materialized in this ancient dungeon. It was super dark, dusty as hell, and even the smallest move echoed like crazy. The squad's main and only mage used her powers to light the way. Moving forward, the main character noticed that pretty much everything in the dungeon was trashed. He said a stone dungeon could only get this messed up by water and wind, but this place wasn't wind damaged, and there was no moisture. He guessed the destruction could be from dark mana. The main character asked the warrior if he understood right, that he could also heal people. John joked that he must be a physical therapist. The warrior got pissed at John's comment and yelled that he wasn't a physical therapist, he was a monk. But while the squad was arguing, a swarm of flying creatures suddenly decided to attack them. The squad's mage realized those were scarabs and hurried to use her skills to drive the monsters away. Ailey told everyone to move on, to get out of here fast, cause there's no way they could handle that many flying critters. The main character grabbed a potion and asked if someone could use wind magic. He downed the magic potion and asked the mage to spread it throughout the area. Gusts of wind instantly made the potion fill the room, getting rid of the flying scarabs. While the mage was trying to figure out how the main character chugged the potion, their teammates were baffled at how the two of them cleared the room. Ailey thanked everyone for the good work and offered each of them a mana potion before they continued on. The whole squad was stoked about the gift and grateful to their teammate. Houston pointed out that many mana potions were pretty expensive, but the guy said he knew a pharmacist and could afford to buy them. The main character was happy about the gift and accepted a big bottle of mana potion, thinking, "I'm glad there are people this generous." The squad kept moving through the dungeon, but John told everyone to hold up. He pointed out the split in the tunnel, 2 different paths branching off on either side. The warrior was pissed, but he noticed the priestess suddenly looked scared of something and asked what was wrong. The girl replied in a trembling voice that there was something awful down the left path. The left path was radiating an insane amount of dark magic, which was what freaked her out so badly. The monk didn't want to go down that creepy path that gave him the heebie-jeebies. He suggested they take the right fork. But the main character heroically declared that they had to choose the left path and figure out what was causing the dark magic. The squad leader was furious. He didn't want to risk his life or the lives of his allies. He grabbed the main character by the collar and yelled at him for trying to walk straight into a death trap. John and the other girl in the squad tried to stop the monk and let Houston explain his reasoning. The other girls in the squad agreed with the guy. They didn't want to throw their lives away on some dumb decision. The squad leader brushed the main character off, saying if he wanted to go to that godforsaken place, he could go it alone. Half the group, the commander, the priestess, and the mage, headed down the path to the right. Tina asked the main character if he was okay, but he just wanted to know why she didn't go with her squad. She replied that he must have a damn good reason for this. The main character was glad the girl trusted his judgment. He also asked Ale why he didn't leave. Mr. Ale, with a kind smile, said that they should trust the healer. Meanwhile, the second team, the one that went to the right, hadn't run into a single monster. The squad kept moving forward. The commander was wondering what was going on with that guy right now. The squad's mage could understand why Tina stayed with the main character, but she didn't get Ale's intentions at all. Suddenly, the monk stopped dead in his tracks. He heard some really freaky sounds coming from the far end of the corridor. These guys walked right into a black mana trap, and it's hungry to wipe out what's left of their 3-person squad. The young priestess stepped on something nasty that pierced her leg. Now she's cursed. If they don't get back to the main character, she's a goner. The squad captain tried using his holy power to heal the girl's wound, but it was no use. Lucky for them, the main character showed up just then. He knew there'd be traps along this path. The dude was totally shocked to see Houston. He didn't think he'd come after their fight. Tina followed the main character too. She noticed the magic seal was broken. That's what triggered the trap. The squad leader figured Houston knew about this from the start, so he started demanding he heal the priestess. But then he realized he wasn't calling the shots here, so he got down on his knees, begging the main character to save her. That's exactly what the guy wanted, so Houston got right to healing. He pulled out a gift that young priest Carl had given him recently as a thank you. While the main dude was trying to rescue the priestess, the rest of the team were debating the odds of this mission actually working. Luckily, John showed up, carrying the rescued girl on his back. She was already coming around. Everyone was super grateful to the main guy for what he did. Nobody could believe they had such a skilled healer on the team. The squad kept moving deeper into the dungeon. They reached a huge red door, supposedly the last one. Behind the door, the ancient dungeon's big bad was waiting for them, ready for a fight. Every member of the party felt this terrifying aura rolling off the demon. But then, out of nowhere, some weird thing just flew straight at the monster. Everyone was totally blown away by what they saw. Meanwhile, the demon's remains got squashed flat, leaving absolutely nothing behind. Turns out, Houston was the one who took down the dungeon's final boss. He just let loose an arrow. No one could believe the main character was capable of that kind of move, something that takes a serious amount of holy power. Houston's using his ability to send those freak arrows right back where they came from. Everyone scattered to search the room for valuables, finders, keepers. Tina stumbled upon a blood-soaked altar, the kind where they were sacrificing people not too long ago. Without a second thought, the main character went right to it, guessing there was something hidden underneath. Turns out he was right. Houston finds a gray stone chest. But before our hero can even crack it open, zombies jump out of nowhere and attack. The whole squad gets into fighting stance, because now their top priority is staying alive. The team leader uses his priest skills to fight back the zombie horde. The main character isn't just standing around either. He pulls out his freak crossbow to use those holy arrows. In the middle of the fight, Houston realizes the undead shouldn't be moving if the dungeon master's already dead. But when the main character turns toward the monster's corpse, he realizes its core is missing. Right then, John blacks out. Houston's worried sick, but sees the guys still breathing. The rest of the squad also collapsed, lifeless, onto the dungeon floor. The main character figures that in this case, the dungeon boss must be among them. He fires freak arrows, which have a stamina boosting skill, at the only person who didn't fall asleep with the others. Mr. Ale deflected the main character's attack, revealing his wicked intentions. The main character only has one puzzle left to solve: why the guy hasn't fallen asleep yet. Just then, Houston remembers that he's the only one in the squad who didn't drink the water Ale gave him. Without hesitation, the main character launches an attack, wanting to expose the guy for who he really is. Mr. Ale, using dark magic, transforms into his true form. The dungeon boss acknowledged Houston's skills, seeing as no one before him had ever cracked this mystery. But he's not about to let that slow him down, so he stabs his own hand to make a sacrifice. The main character has no problem stopping the dungeon boss's attack with his dagger. The next second, he fires a stone arrow from the freak's crossbow, catching Ale completely off guard. The dungeon boss keeps rambling about some god who chose him as his successor. While Ale was attacking the main character, he kept drawing a magic circle with his blood to end the fight faster. Houston got caught in a trap, but he still wasn't planning on giving up, so Ale noticed light coming from the magic circle. The main character had no problem breaking free from the trap, but he did respect his opponent's abilities. Seeing how easily Houston beat him, Ale started to lose faith in himself. Meanwhile, the main character pulled out a glowing orb from his inventory, the one he'd found in the chest earlier. Ale was blown away that his opponent busted open the chest's seal with holy water like it was nothing. The dude charged, trying to snatch the glowing orb from the main character. That thing was the dungeon's core. But just as Ale got close to Houston, he chucked the orb way up in the air, high above. Without even hesitating, the dungeon boss leaped for the core, but the main character snagged it first at the last second. Houston pulled out his freakish crossbow and immediately blasted Ale in the back with a volley of bolts. Trying to defend himself from the main character, Ale tried to use his blackthorn forest skill, but Houston sliced right through the thorny branches with his dagger. No problem. Ale totally lost hope of winning, since the orb was now completely out of his reach. He kept rambling about his god, who apparently told him once that, let's just say, something intense was watching them. The main character perked up at that. He figured Ale must be seeing the admin panel too. But here's the thing, Houston wasn't some crazy zealot of any particular faith. The second the dungeon boss went down, the whole squad started waking up. First thing they saw was Ailey's lifeless body, and that freaked them out, wondering what the heck was going on. Houston filled everyone in on what went down in the room while they were all out cold. John asked him how he knew Ailey was bad news, and the main guy said he just doesn't trust people who are too nice. Houston asked the party's mage, Jessie, to draw a teleportation circle to get them out of the dungeon, and she figured he had to be some kind of big shot, so she did what he said. Meanwhile, the main character walked over to the priestess, who was standing nearby and already feeling better after the surgery. He asked her what she thought about the bodies of the adventurers who'd been sacrificed. The priestess agreed it wasn't right to just leave their bodies in the dungeon, so she asked everyone to say a prayer for their souls to rest in peace. Once the burial was done, the main character got an achievement for participating in the ritual prayer. After the ceremony, Tina also shielded all the victims' bodies with a magic barrier to move them out of the dungeon. Meanwhile, Jessie finished creating the magic circle that was supposed to help them get back to the surface. But just as she started walking towards the group, Kyle, who was still alive, jumped her from behind. Except it wasn't Kyle who wounded her, but the entity that was his god. The main character took charge, asking Tina, the monk, and John to start moving the bodies to the magic circle. He and the priestess would handle facing off against their new opponent, this god. While the main character was keeping Kyle busy, the priestess used a spell to banish the undead. Kyle didn't like that spell one bit, so he started attacking the priestess. But Houston couldn't leave her hanging, so he took the hit for her again. The priestess, meanwhile, finished casting a spell that attacked Kyle. This dude knew he was about to get wrecked, again, so he whipped out the dungeon core. He crushes the magic sphere, like a final salute to his boss or something. Destroying the dungeon core makes the whole place start collapsing, threatening to bury anyone still inside. A little while later, after the mission's done, Tina and Houston are chatting. She's bummed because she's never been great at magic or sword fighting, but she's always wanted to be a swordswoman, so the main guy tells her to go for it. The monk and the priestess went to turn in the quest, and their team split up in the chillest way possible. Now it's just Houston, Tina, and John, and they're trying to figure out what's next. The girl says she wants to take the main guy's advice and become a swordswoman. So Houston gives her a letter and sends her to a sword master he knows, someone he thinks is top tier. After Tina leaves, Jessie comes up to the guys and asks them to hang tight, cause she needs to talk to Houston. Turns out, Houston got invited to the Mage's Tower to talk about what's been going down lately. Professor Tansel was there, along with a Professor Charlie from the Dark Tower. He's the one who called our main guy in for a chat. The Dark Wizard's Tower. Their whole deal is finding the right ways to use dark magic. Charlie asked our hero to trade some stuff from the dungeon, stuff he thought was super valuable for his research. As a trade, he offered up some items from his personal stash. The main character got hooked on one item that really stood out from the rest. As soon as Houston wound up the statuette, it started playing this weird tune. Charlie got a little flustered, since that thing was a gift from his buddies. But our hero pointed out the statuette restores stamina. So, Houston traded the ritual dagger from the dungeon, you know, the one from Isla, and got a bunch of scrolls in return. He thought it was a good deal, since he was actually looking for scrolls with potion recipes and ingredients, including a recipe for a freeze potion. The main character asked John if he wanted to stick around the tower for a while longer. Houston wanted to make the most of his time visiting the tower, so he headed to the potion shop. One of the guys in the shop was mixing up a brew for the main character, but suddenly he asked him to leave out a certain herb. But this dude apparently thought he knew better about potions, so he didn't listen to Houston. John figured the people working at this shop were pretty rude, and he didn't want to go back there. But just as they started to walk away from the shop, a huge explosion went off behind them. The shop workers couldn't figure out what caused such a massive blast. The guy who was brewing the potions tried to create a magic shield to protect himself from the smoke, but the thing he made didn't last long. The smoke from the explosion just dissolved it. The guy realized he couldn't stand up to this power, so he tried to bolt from the shop, but Houston stopped him, blocking his path. He told everyone that the explosion was caused by sweetgrass, which isn't dangerous on its own. But every time you inhale the smoke, the mana inside every mage starts to melt down. As soon as the main character finished explaining, one of the shop workers threw up mana. That triggered a massive freakout, so everyone inside tried to bolt. But the main character wasn't about to let them leave the shop, so he had to get a little rough. Everyone in the room realized that if they let the smoke out, all the magical devices in the tower would be toast. So Houston says he knows a way to fix it, but first he's got to get rid of the smoke. The main character knows that the longer he waits, the more mana these mages are burning through, and that's a big problem for them. The shop workers dropped to their knees in front of Houston, begging him to heal them. It was moments like this, having power over people, that the main character loved about being a healer. Houston assigned everyone the task of getting one of the ingredients for the potion. Meanwhile, he was busy mixing them in the right proportions for the concoction in a big cauldron. But they'd been in that room way too long, so even John, with his low magic level, started feeling the effects. Luckily, the main character finished brewing the potion and spread it throughout the room. The vapors from the potion turned the smoke into jelly-like orbs, making it easy to collect. Houston also whipped up some healing potions for the mages while they were tossing the orbs into baskets. The guy who started the explosion came up to the main character to apologize and ask why he mentioned fragrant grass when he put coastal grass in the potion. Turns out, most of the ingredients are shipped to the store from the mage's tower, and a large quantity of it might have caused the coastal grass to become fragrant. The main character realized something weird was going on in the tower's greenhouse, so he headed there ASAP. On the magic screen, Professor Tansel approved Houston's request to visit the room for research since he was currently tied up. Jessie was talking to the guy. Pure luck she ran into Houston. The second they got to the greenhouse, the guys noticed the plants were acting weird. Jessie pointed out that all the magic circles holding things together were busted, and the mana level in the place was crazy high. Just then, one of the plants went after John, but the main guy saved him just in time. Turns out, it was Martin's ivy, and it had evolved into a monster from sucking up all that magic. Trying to shield Jessie, John sliced through the plant's branches with one swing of his sword. But instead of staying cut, new branches grew back right away, so they realized the ivy could regenerate. The main guy also took a shot at the plant with his freaky crossbow, but that didn't do squat either. Houston noticed, though, that the ivy's regeneration speed changed depending on the type of damage. Jessie took another shot at the plant with some fire magic, but it was a total bust. The girl was about to scream for help, but the main character pulled out some mana-melting jelly orbs. The plant sucked up those spheres and spread the smoke all over the greenhouse, making itself unable to absorb magic. But the guys also lost their ability to use their powers, leaving them with only their physical strength. John's a beast with a sword, so he's hacking at the ivy's roots to hold it back. Meanwhile, Houston's coming in from above with a dagger, trying to hit the ivy right in its core. After the main character took down the plant, the guy asked the girl to lead them to the main magic circle. But the slab was destroyed, which meant the magic circle couldn't handle the mana levels in the greenhouse. The main character's scanning the mana flow diagram because he realizes there's going to be a meltdown soon that could level the whole mage tower. Houston, risking everything, is getting close to the magic circle, hoping a high-resistance magic-absorbing sphere from the dungeon will suck it up. But the closer the main character gets to the slab, the more dangerous it becomes for him. John and Jessie are already writing Houston's obituary, figuring he's toast after that much mana exposure. But at the last second, the main guy throws the orb towards the magic circle. The core slammed into the stone slab and started sucking up all the stored magic. Thankfully, the orb's power from the dungeon was enough to completely absorb the magic. John and Jessie piled on the main guy, so relieved he'd made it through. The girl called Professor Tansel again to give him the lowdown on the greenhouse situation. If the mage's tower had been damaged, the protective barrier guarding the city would have collapsed. But the professor doesn't have the authority to grant access to the mana core, so the crew headed to someone else. They went to Hive, one of the Scarlet Tower's mages, who thought their story was total BS and denied them access to the mana core. The main character was hoping the guy would figure things out himself, but he didn't expect a flat-out no. Mr. Hive also insulted Jessie, who was trying to talk sense into him, so Houston just advised the guy to evacuate everyone from the tower. But the Tower Master wasn't about to listen to the main character. His words just pissed him off. Mr. Hive threw them out, and meanwhile, Houston noticed the Master was acting strangely nervous. The main character decided to use his observational gaze skill to find out what was about to happen to the guy. Back in his office, Mr. Hive was freaking out that everyone would find out his secret. The mana power system was busted, and the Tower Master elections were coming up. But as he got up from his desk and was about to leave, he noticed a weird glow to the side. Another mana explosion ripped through the room, demolishing everything, including the Master. Mr. Hive tried to use magic to free himself from the rubble, but the mana feedback just messed him up even worse. Just then, the main character walked into the wrecked office, reminding him of their recent meeting. Mr. Hive started apologizing to Houston for his behavior because he knew he was about to bite the dust. The main character knew the guy was only doing it to save his own skin. Houston was about to leave the office, but as a final offer, he proposed trading Hive's life for something valuable to himself. The master pulled out the key that unlocks the mana center, effectively holding the lives of the townspeople hostage. The main character noticed that too. Plus, he didn't even need the key to get in there anymore, since the explosion wrecked all the seals. Without a second glance, Houston left the office, leaving the guy to face certain doom. After dealing with that mess, the main character bolted towards the exit to check out the situation outside. On the way, he ran into some kids crying. They were worried about their friend who'd sacrificed herself to save them. Right then, the main character gets the calming voice skill, which he uses to soothe the kids. He heads towards the place where they last saw the girl to try and help her out. Houston finds her body buried under bookshelves. It looks like the girl's been through a lot. She notices the main character isn't wearing a protective suit and begs him not to sacrifice himself to save her. Houston is blown away by the girl's selflessness and how mature she is for her age. So, he uses his ability to stop the bleeding, even though the mana flow is messed up because he's a defective healer. The main character freed the girl from the rubble and was headed towards the exit. But he had to slam on the brakes halfway there when he saw the staircase ahead was destroyed. Then Houston had no choice but to tie the girl to himself and jump out of a crack in the wall. As the guy plummeted, a huge explosion rocked the place behind him. The main character was determined to save the girl because he saw her as the future of the Azul continent. But Houston wasn't planning on dying. He had a plan to survive the fall from that height. He pulled out his freaky crossbow and fired a stone bolt into the wall of the Crimson Tower with a bandage rope tied to the end. Luckily, the main character's makeshift anchor held under the pressure. Everyone was watching Houston. After all, he'd saved his own life and the girl's, who'd bravely endured all those terrible events. As soon as the main character's companion learned that he was heading to the Mana Center, she gave him a scroll containing some useful intel. The girl's friends rushed over to her. They'd been worried sick about her the whole time. Meanwhile, the main character headed to the Mana Center to get to the bottom of this whole mess. When he arrived at his destination, he found Jesse and John lying unconscious on the magic circuits. Professor Tansel was also in the room. He warned the main character that the Mana Center was draining mana. However, Houston was confident that the Mana Center couldn't hurt him, since he was a defective healer. The central crystal went completely haywire. Meanwhile, the main character fired at it with his crossbow. But Houston's arrows had no effect on the Mana Center. It dissolved them with a protective barrier. Now, it was the crystal's turn to attack all potential threats, and the main character was right in its sights. Lucky for him, Houston blocked that mana bullet with his dungeon core. All he got was a scratch on his shoulder. Professor Tansel pointed out that those herbs wouldn't do squat against already melted mana. The crystal started blasting the main character again, using all that magical juice it had been saving up. Professor Tansel was scratching his head, trying to figure out Houston's game. All he'd done so far was juice up the mana core. But the main character didn't seem too stressed. He just charged right in. Houston decided to slam the mana core with his own core, since it had crazy magic defenses. It looked like the main character was going to take down the crystal, but it just triggered some weird reaction. Houston was pissed that this monster was wasting his time. He thought this would be a cakewalk. The mana core evolved, sprouted a couple of arms, and started wailing on the main character. Houston figured if the crystal was so hungry for mana, it couldn't resist the magic arrows he fired off to the side, luring the monster into a trap. And just to amp things up, he tears up the scroll of tainted mana that girl gave him earlier. Our main dude conjures up a bunch of stone arrows, juiced up with that spell, to blast the monster. After a bit, Master Loki thanks Houston for saving the city and tells him to pick out a reward for himself. As his gift, the main character asks the guy for a magical mental rest barrier circle. But Master Loki bums him out, saying he can't give him that item, since only mages from the Crimson Tower can have a barrier circle. So, the guy declares our main character an honorary member of the Crimson Magic Tower. So now Houston's not just a healer who can't heal, he's also a mage who can't cast spells. The next day, our main guy's already chilling in his new room, the kind they give to all honorary members of the Scarlet Tower. While John's stoked about the new digs, Houston's checking out his stat window, where he finds out he's got 6841 points. Plus, our main character unlocked a new ability. He's now got an item slot, which he got for finding 3 rare relics. John offered the kid his cloak, the one they gave him when he became an honorary mage of the tower. But the main character didn't want to wear the red cape because it made him look less like a healer, so he decided to stash it in the item slot that popped up. After Houston sorted out his items, John decided to pull out his stuff, the things he'd been holding onto since before he got sucked into this world. The main character said the kid got lucky, since he warped into this universe with his gear, while he showed up empty-handed. All Houston had left from his old life was a photo of the people he cared about, and he left the frame in his room. The main character and his buddy got a warm send-off from their new acquaintances, who were grateful for their help. Next up for the guys was Kamar, which was supposed to be a city for the super rich. But when the main character asked the driver about a horse-drawn carriage, the guy told him that they weren't running right now. The guys were pulled away from their conversation by a squabble between the townspeople and the guards. The people were demanding to be allowed to cross the bridge, but the soldiers couldn't let them through because of the recent complications with the mana core. One of the mages couldn't handle not being able to get past the barrier, so he decided to use his power. But after he used his magic, monsters that looked like mermaids started crawling onto land. The guards bravely fought the attackers, but they weren't doing a great job of holding back so many creatures. The main character couldn't stand by while other people were in danger, so he started firing his crossbow. John charged in too, using his swordsmanship skills to slice and dice the monsters. Once they dealt with all the mermaids, John thought they could relax, but the main character warned him that it wasn't over yet. One of the soldiers got his shoulder scratched by a monster. The wound wasn't too deep and didn't seem life-threatening. But then the guard's arm started throbbing, and his skin turned blue and grew spikes. The main character noticed the guy's transformation too, so he went over to tell him that there was no cure for this affliction. The soldier was devastated by what he heard, because he knew his time was running out. But Houston stopped the guy's suicide attempt, because he wanted to try and create his own healing potion. To do that, he needed a mermaid's liver, so the dude headed to the bottom of the sea. Our hero took a potion that helps him breathe underwater, plus he got a skill that lets him regulate his body temperature. While Houston was checking out his ability, a water bullet whizzed past him, barely missing him. Responding to the mermaid attack, the main character pulls out his freakish crossbow and fires it at the attackers. There were a ton of monsters underwater, but the guy manages to hit a few of them. But besides the regular mermaids, their leader also lived in the water, and he noticed our hero's arrival. The monster tried to grab Houston by his cloak, but the guy managed to dodge it. The next time the monster attacked, our hero used another mermaid as a shield, saving his own skin. Houston knew he was running out of time, because the potion that helps him breathe was about to wear off. So, Houston's firing a healing arrow at that merman to weaken him up. With the next shot, the hero nails the monster right in the head, taking him down for good. Just when John was starting to sweat about his buddy, Houston pops out of the water. He whipped up a potion that stops people from turning into merfolk, and the soldiers were super grateful. But, right when everyone was celebrating, the guard captain got word that the mermaids were hitting all the other city ports too. That meant the infirmary was packed with soldiers who'd been bitten by the monsters. The hero was hauling ass towards the hospital, trying to save as many people as he could. He was blasting healing arrows from his freaky crossbow to stop the soldiers' transformations. But for some folks, the change was already complete, so Houston had no choice but to defend himself. John was at the infirmary too, fighting alongside the hero against the merfolk. Houston was surrounded by monsters, and he was in deep trouble since his hand was occupied. But John saved the day, sacrificing himself by taking the mermaid's blow on his shoulder. The main character freed his hand and was able to shoot the monster, making it the last one standing. John was ticked off that his sword broke so easily against the mermaid's attacks. The guard commander rushed to the infirmary, upset that some of his men had passed on. The man came out to talk to the main character and thank him for his help fighting the monsters. But their conversation was interrupted by people who were on the pier when the mermaids attacked. They demanded he give them healing potions because they were worried they might be infected. Houston remembered perfectly that all these people ran from the pier when the monsters attacked, so he didn't think they deserved help. In exchange for giving everyone a healing potion, the main character demanded 400,000 gold per bottle, or proof they showed signs of infection. Of course, all the complainers immediately started saying they'd been bitten by mermaids. Then Houston offered everyone who wanted it a potion that would turn them into monsters, so he could later give them a healing antidote. But the townspeople didn't like the main character's offer. They preferred to get as far away from him as possible. The commander of the soldiers admired how quickly Houston dealt with the riffraff, but still couldn't allow him to cross the sea. So, the main character decided to visit the artifact appraisal shop right before closing time. He was greeted by a young guy who, as soon as he saw the rare item Houston brought, was immediately thrilled he'd come. The appraiser was about to rip off the main character, wanting to lowball the artifact's price. But just then, a young woman walked in. She also worked at the shop and flew into a rage when she found out her colleague was up to no good again. The girl apologized to the customers for her partner. She was ashamed of his behavior. So, the shop employee took over the job of crafting the artifact from the materials provided. She made him some enchanted diving goggles that boost underwater vision, and the main character was stoked about them. Our hero gave one of the artifacts to John, who was totally blown away by the gift. So, the dude's inventory is stacking up with rare items, and he even unlocked a new slot. It was already night when the guys left the artifact appraiser's shop, and they had nowhere to crash. But just when they were about to resign themselves to sleeping on the streets, a familiar voice stopped them. A soldier's family took the guys in. The same soldier our hero saved from turning into a freaking mermaid. These folks might look like your average family, but they're actually the ancient and honored Kamara guard family. Turns out, the girl from the artifact shop is also from this family. She's the rescued soldier's sister. That night, the travelers stayed with the guard family, but our main guy couldn't get any shut-eye. When he went to the window, he noticed some weird fog, so he decided to climb up the watchtower nearby. As soon as the main character stepped inside, some weirdo jumped him from behind. Turns out, it was the guy guarding the tower, and he wasn't happy about the uninvited guest. But Houston's rescued soldier stopped the guard, saying he was his uncle. He was a retired guard, also from a respectable family. The guy apologized to the main character for being so rough. Houston used his observation skill and fired a crossbow bolt into the fog to see what it was hiding. A whole swarm of monsters crawled out of the fog, planning to attack the city under the cover of darkness. All the guards rushed down to the shore to defend the city from these unwanted creatures. The main character and John watched the soldiers fighting the sea monsters, but they couldn't just stand by any longer. So, John grabbed the item the guard family had given him. The main character was checking things out, and he noticed that fish usually aren't so eager to leave the water. Turns out these creatures were getting help from warlocks using a potion that let them breathe on land. Houston attacked the monsters with moonlight, weakening the other creatures. But instead of warlocks, up pops a crab lord from the depths, and he was their leader. The main character and John were drooling when they saw the Sea King. So much tasty meat on that thing. The girl, risking her neck, tried to stop the crab lord from storming the city. But the monster was too strong, and now he's coming at her with his claw, trying to take her out. Just then, the main character jumps in to save her, slicing the crab lord to pieces with his new blade. That weakened the monster, so the rest of the warriors charged in too. The fight raged until morning, but in the end, they managed to defeat the sea creatures, defending the freedom of the city and its people. From all the stress, the main character slept for a whole day, so now he's totally disoriented, wondering where he is. Everyone was waiting for John and Houston to wake up so they could throw a feast celebrating the city's rescue. While partying, the main character noticed a strange glint on Lord Crab's body. After pulling the item out of the monster's shell, Houston realized it was another rare ingredient. Meanwhile, the guys were called to meet with Lord Kamara, who wanted to thank them for saving the city. All Houston knew about this guy was that he was an honorary member of the Scarlet Tower, but he was also a pretty emotional dude. Gawain wanted to thank everyone for saving the city, so he invited them to his estate. As a reward for the guard family, he decided to create a knightly order, which would greatly raise the status of all its members. When it was Houston's turn to receive his reward, he refused treasures and potions, which really surprised the Lord. The main character wanted something more valuable in the long run, so he mentioned the village of Hind, where he came from. Houston wanted the Lord to establish a mages association in that area, which would be a strong counterweight to the Adventurers Guild and the church. The Lord was sweating bullets about how much time and money the construction would cost, even with the Crimson Tower's support, but he had to bite the bullet and agree. On top of that, the main character hit the guy up for funding to get back to Hind Village. Houston factored in sea transport and a bunch of comfort spells for the trip, all in that price. So, the Lord caved on all the heroes' demands, and that evening, the guys hit the road. They found a transporter who was in town trying to get his daughter treated for some illness. Checking the map, our hero noticed they were heading through the Red Forest, which is notorious for outsiders getting totally lost. While Houston had some downtime, he figured he'd check out the list of membership perks that buffed his abilities. He remembered that, besides being an honorary member of the Mages Association, he'd also become a knight. Plus, the main character snagged a new quest, rack up 10,000 points. The trip was pretty chill, and by nightfall, the travelers were almost at the Red Forest. Not long before they reached the shore, though, their boat started rocking like crazy. A massive sea monster was heading their way, and it definitely didn't look friendly. The main guy, thinking fast, pulled out his freak crossbow. He recognized the approaching monster as a kamafan fish, but the dude couldn't stop the monster's attack. It flipped the boat anyway. As Houston went flying, he tried to slow the fish down by firing ice arrows from his crossbow. John also pulled out his new weapon, the one the guard's family and Kamara gave him. The family they were transporting was totally fine thanks to them, and meanwhile, the main character had frozen the fish. Houston was worried, because kamafan fish usually hate sunlight. That's why they live way down deep. So, he used his investigator eye to examine it, and realized the fish had been dead for 3 days, and when he made a cut, some weird substance spilled out. It was a plant monster parasite that had been controlling the kamafan fish and was supposed to die with its host. But then, out of nowhere, the final boss showed up, and this thing had massive tentacles. Houston braced for a fight and asked John for backup, but turns out the dude was already out cold from seasickness. The monster's tentacles started attacking the helpless family on the transport, trying to drag them down to the bottom of the ocean. The main character pierced a few tentacles with his arrows, but the little girl, Ruby, was still a hostage. She screamed in terror, and John heard it, snapping him back to reality as memories flooded back from another life, another world, where he also had a daughter. Without a second thought, the guy dove into the sea with the girl. The main character knows that if he leaves his partner alone, he's gonna drown with that kid. Meanwhile, John's fighting off the monster's tentacles, but they just keep regenerating, over and over. Right when the guy was about to lose it, he saw a light on the surface of the water. It was arrows shot by the main character, and they were filled with air. Right after the arrows, the main dude himself showed up, holding a freaking frozen knife. Houston told his partner to watch over the girl while he handled this monster. This guy conjured up a knife that can also cast freeze spells on top of everything else. But as soon as he started attacking, the monster's head popped out, like it was acknowledging his power. The squid's using some kind of crazy high-pitched sound to call in its little buddies as shields. Even so, the hero managed to freeze part of the monster's body, weakening it big time. Houston sliced the creature in half with his dagger, so it couldn't move anymore. A bunch of little squids started popping out of the monster, no longer under its control. Suddenly, the main character got a ton of notifications saying he got points for curing all the creatures of the parasite. When Houston got back to the shore of the Red Forest, Rudy's parents ran up to him. They were seriously worried that the girl was feeling sick because of everything that had just happened. The main guy figured she just caught a bad cold, so he was going to start a fire. But John stopped him, because he noticed it was going to rain here pretty soon. Rudy's dad said everything on this island is red, including the people who live here. While he was talking, the main character heard some weird noises, so he pulled out his new dagger. A bunch of red-haired thugs popped out from behind the trees. They'd spotted the travelers. It was the Red Road Gang, and they only robbed people with different hair colors. One of the guys said they needed a healer, and he'd leave the rest alone. Hearing that, the main character offered to trade his skills for a place to crash in the woods. But the guy didn't like that Houston mentioned the Adventurers Guild in his offer. The thug jumped our hero, but he dodged it easy, giving himself room to move. Houston backhanded the mugger across the face with his dagger, knocking him clean out. The hero then kicked the other guy so hard, he went flying across the clearing. In response to that beatdown, the guy ripped open a scroll with some seriously dark magic. Chains shot out of the magic circle and wrapped around our hero, but he snapped them like twigs. So Houston took care of the goons who tried to rob him and told them to take him to their hideout. When the guys led him to their place, the hero was shocked at where it was. Houston went inside the cave and found everyone writhing in pain. A grown man came out to meet the hero, totally surprised to see visitors. The girl the hero roughed up earlier tried to weasel her way out of it, 'cause she knew the man wouldn't understand her getting humiliated. Houston, though, he laid it all out, straight up, to the one guy the whole crew respected. This dude was about to kick our hero to the curb, but he stopped him, said he wanted to help the sick. The Red Road Gang leader agreed to take the guy in, if he'd treat his people. Houston got right to examining the sick girl, trying to figure out what was going on with her. Turns out, the main thing was this phantom headache, driving her completely nuts. Lucky for them, John found a whole stash of medicinal plants, stuff that could actually help. Our hero checked out the ingredients real close and saw they had a ton of useful stuff for making mental potions. But Houston was missing a few key herbs, so he told the guy he had to go get them. John and our hero were left alone. The kid was a little worried about the sick people, but Houston calmed him down. Our hero asked his buddy to hand him a jar of the healing stuff, but bam, it slipped right out of his hands. John went straight for the ingredient jar to grab it off the ground, but something caught his eye. The dude found a bunch of fossilized scarabs lying in a chamber of the cave. Our main guy was scratching his head about this weird deal, 'cause he'd only ever seen scarabs in dungeons. He told John to grab a shovel and bury all the creature corpses in the deepest, darkest corner of the cave. Meanwhile, the main character figured there might be more scarabs in the area, and he had some questions for the Red Road Gang. Houston whipped up a potion from the ingredients they brought and said they needed to take a whole course to fully recover. The bandits actually cared about their buddies, which made our hero rethink his opinion of them. But the question of why there were scarabs in the cave was still hanging over their heads. On top of everything, mental curses are a rare condition that pops up when you mess with some heavy-duty magic. So, our main character suggested they just come clean and tell him what really went down. The guy told our main character that there used to be nothing where the cave is now, but one day, a whole hideout just popped up. Turns out, it's a wandering dungeon, one of those types that can teleport all over the continent. The guy said they'd beaten a ton of monsters living inside the dungeon. Besides that, they found a bunch of scrolls with some seriously powerful magic inside, which they started using. When the bandits showed up in town, nobody believed their story, and one of the mages attacked them. Usually, these guys got their butts kicked by wizards, but this time, using a scroll, they created a sphere that blocked magic, and inside it, they were unstoppable. After that, a few of the gang members went off the deep end because of their new power. The main character listened carefully to the guy's story, and he agreed to help them out. So, John and Houston were exploring the dungeon, looking for a hidden door where all the treasure was stashed. After searching for so long, John got frustrated, so he started smashing the cave walls with his new weapon. So, he finally found this magic circle that was hiding a secret passage behind it. Houston pulled out this magic orb from his inventory, one he got in the dungeon, that amps up your magic level. Hiding behind the wall were a bunch of Red Road gang members, looking to take down the city's mages. The main guy immediately went on the offensive, wanting to take them out before they knew what hit him. Only one dude was still conscious. Houston figured he had to be the real boss of these thugs. But the leader was actually some other guy named Russell, who was standing right behind our hero. When the guy heard the main character say he was there to help him, he just burst out laughing. Russell took Houston as a threat, so he was coming in hot. In the next second, the Red Road gang leader charged, looking to finish off his opponent. But it was no sweat for Houston to dodge the guy trying to take a swing at him. The main character hurled an ice knife at Russell, but only managed to graze the guy's shoulder. The Red Road gang leader kept coming at Houston, totally ignoring the pain from the wound. Just then, John showed up on the side, announcing his presence with a shovel swing. But instead of the victory he expected, the guy just got blasted back by a huge surge of lightning. So now John was being held hostage by the Red Road gang leader. The main character fired crossbow bolts imbued with weird energy, wanting to test Russell's abilities. Turns out, the guy really was born with a resistance to mana, so he takes less damage from that kind of power. Wanting to push the guy's buttons even more, Houston pulls out the honorary member prism from the Magic Association. The main character got the reaction he was looking for, because Russell, totally enraged, charged at him. Houston figured it was to his advantage that the Red Road gang leader had stopped thinking strategically in the fight. Now it'll be easier to outsmart him, cause John's already charging the guy. But even this time, the hit didn't have the effect he wanted, just pissed Russell off even more. Thing is, John's attack was just a feint, giving the main character a chance to hit the guy from behind. Houston's calling on the power of the Ice Blade, cause he's already figured out a way to fight a guy with no mana. Next thing you know, the main character punches Russell in the face with a fist that's frozen solid. In the end, Houston managed to take down the Red Road gang leader with his new technique. John doesn't get how such a simple attack could have such a powerful effect. After the guys dealt with the bandits, they explored the cave and found a symbiote deep inside, Kamar's secret weapon. A symbiote's a type of parasitic monster that makes its host unbelievably strong, and the one Houston's looking at is about to hatch. But in exchange for power, it'll start draining the person's memories, life force, everything. Out of nowhere, Russell jumps the guys from behind. He's finally shaken off that concussion. He activates a magic circle, something he can use even though he's got zero magical skills. The spell triggers a teleport, and it grabs both the main character and his partner. Next thing they know, they're blasted outside the dungeon. That's when Houston realizes Russell's stalling for time until the symbiote hatches. The hero's trying to figure out what to do. Part of him doesn't want to help these thugs, but John talks him around. So, they head back into the cave. Houston says it's just a matter of waiting a little longer. Meanwhile, Russell stumbles across a jar filled with mana, which wasn't there before. He dumps it all over the symbiote, trying to speed up its growth. The cocoon needs more magic to develop. Right after Russell does this, he hears his Red Road gang members screaming. He steps outside the dungeon and sees a bunch of his people lying around, totally knocked out. Russell's convinced Houston did it and tries to take a swing, but the guy stops him and says the Red Road gang leader is the real reason for the sickness. The main character also says the stronger the symbiote gets, the more dangerous it is for these people's lives. He offers to help the guy out if he reconsiders storming Kamar, because if Russell does that, with the symbiote's power and the mana resistance, he could destroy not just the city, but the whole Azul continent. Finally, the guy gives in. He realizes his people's lives are more important than his ambitions. John comes out of hiding, not sure if they shouldn't just take out the symbiote right now. But the main character convinces him that Russell put up a protection circle, so the monster won't wake up. Houston walks into the first room of the dungeon, where the Porter family's resting. They say Rudy's getting better. The main character asks his partner for a minute because he's got a gift. Houston pulls out what he got earlier for beating the crab. This shard is a great boost for defensive gear. So, while chilling out, our main guy gets a 10,000-point bonus, which unlocks a daily refreshed skill vending machine. Today, Houston's snagging the Screw Orders ability, and it's only gonna set him back $1,000. Suddenly, he hears the whole place start shaking like crazy for some reason. He bolts out to where the Red Road gang's hanging out to see what the heck's going on. Then, a bunch of scarabs come swarming out of the dungeon depths, and Houston's starting to get a really bad feeling about all this. Our hero heads off with the kid to where the symbiote was, but they find a bunch of monsters blocking their way. One of the scarabs jumps Russell, and he doesn't even see it coming before the monster's all over him. To seal up the hole in the wall, the monsters start forming a ball, gobbling up any of their buddies in the way. But first, the newly formed ball takes a shot at our guys, looking to take them out quick. No sweat for Houston to dodge that clumsy attack, and he fires back with his freaky crossbow. But even after blasting through the core of that sphere, our hero still doesn't snag the win he's after. He realizes the monster that's formed has self-healing abilities, and for some reason, that news actually gets him pumped. Houston suggests Russell attack the sphere, close the gap, and unleash his reverse mana skill. The real scarab, which was at the sphere's center, popped out because of the guy's skill, and right after that, our hero fires ice arrows from his souped-up crossbow. When the guys got to where the symbiote had been growing, they found the cocoon was cracked open. Houston finds a Gordian tear among the remains, which completely heals the mind. Just then, one of the Red Road gang leader's buddies walks up behind them. Our hero tells Russell to watch himself, cause the symbiote might already be messing with his head. But the guy says he managed to fight off the monster's attack, so he's totally clear-headed right now. Out of nowhere, this dude named Bill pulls out a magic sword, blazing with green energy. He's saying he's got Gordian completely under his thumb, so they can hit Kamar. Right then, the main dude blasts Bill with stone arrows, cause he's sus as hell. He realizes none of them could have known the symbiote's name except the parasite itself. Guess the monster figures there's no point in hiding its true form anymore. He's about to take out our hero, blaming him for blowing his cover. Russell jumps in, attacking the symbiote, begging it to release his partner, who's his best bud. But the parasite's way stronger, sending Russell flying backwards. The main guy notices the symbiote shut down its magic before attacking, cause it knows about his mana resistance skill. Houston's out of options, tells Russell they gotta bail, like, right now. Safe and sound in cover, our hero asks the guy to give up a little blood. This symbiote riding Bill is seriously pissed that he lost his targets, but he finally spots Russell, who's been waiting for the perfect chance to strike. The symbiote's way faster though, and slams into the guy with everything he's got, sending him flying. Now he's far enough away, Russell chucks a vial of blood at the monster. Gordian sees the wound on the guy's arm and figures the jar's full of anti-mana blood, so he smashes it mid-air. The monster's stoked he cracked their plan so easily, calls them a bunch of morons. But just then, the main character shows up with his crossbow loaded with blood-soaked bolts. He fires them at the symbiote and scores. Houston says the vial had dud healer blood, but the bolts are loaded with Russell's. With the mana potions, the main character takes down the symbiote, since it soaked up the anti-magic blood. Now, they gotta safely extract the parasite from Bill's body, so Houston uses his extraction skill to pull foreign objects out of stuff. The hero's about to stab the symbiote's real body with his dagger, but the parasite's begging for mercy. It promises to make Houston way more powerful, but the guy's not buying it, useless for a healer. So, the symbiote promises to share some intel instead. The parasite spills that all you need to make a regular dungeon is a strong, boss-level monster and a person with the skills of a swordmaster or archmage. But to create a wandering dungeon, you need power that can warp space itself, god-level stuff. The hero realizes the god who did this is definitely up to no good, cause a ton of wandering dungeons will throw Azul into total chaos. Houston holds up his end of the deal, freeing the symbiote from his dagger. But the parasite takes advantage of the hero's kindness and attacks, trying to take over the guy's body. The symbiote's inside Houston's mind now, planning to give orders to tear the whole continent down. Russell's screaming his lungs out, trying to get his partner to snap out of it. But the hero doesn't need any help from the outside, cause he's ripping the parasite right out of his own body. The symbiote can't figure out how Houston broke free from its control. The main guy's saying he doesn't like taking orders, because he's got a skill that boosts his mental resistance. Houston walks up to Russell. The kid's still not sure if it's really a person in front of him, but the main character's completely shaken off the alien influence, so now he's checking out Russell's body and sees he's in bad shape. Houston's sure the admin's watching him, so he really lays it on thick, asking for a useful skill in the roulette. Luckily, the main character gets the recycling ability, which lets him break down the blood arrows and turn them back into blood. Russell wakes up surrounded by his teammates. He needs a blood transfusion for a few more hours, so he can't move right now. The next second, a huge noise echoes through the cave, and the ground starts to crumble. The main character tears open the symbiote's body, wanting to get the dungeon boss's sphere out of it. He asks the only mage in the Red Road gang to fill the sphere with mana, so they can open a portal back outside. Russell's asking the main guy for a sec. He's worried he's gonna screw up the portal. Houston's like, "Turns out you're a pretty decent leader, man." He's trying to chill him out, says the portal ain't even got magic in it. Just when the main guy's almost at the center of the teleport, something big hits him. The whole time, John's been dead to the world in his corner. Not even the place falling apart woke him up. The dude's seriously bummed that his partner could just forget about him like that. The girl trailing the main guy shouts that the teleport portal's about to fizzle out. Houston's cursing out the symbiote again, saying it gave them a crummy core. But the main guy still uses his recycling skill to try and reuse the teleport portal. Right then, Houston's stamina hits 0, so he can't use his ability. Outside, the thugs notice the teleport portal they came through just vanished. Good thing a new passage opened up, and everyone left in the cave came pouring out. The main character remembers that they got out thanks to John, who used an item from his inventory to restore Houston's stamina. Everyone was chilling after their crazy adventures, and John found out that Russell and that other dude in the squad are related. The guy's uncle explained that Russell's half aristocrat because his sister married some rich nobleman, thanks to her high mana level. But Russell was born with a resistance to mana, so his whole family disowned him. Whatever, the guy says his past doesn't matter, cause he's gonna get the axe soon anyway. Everyone's worried about what's gonna happen to the Red Road gang leader, but he tells them not to sweat it. But Houston and John both know the guy's probably lying, and he's most likely facing the gallows. The main character doesn't want Russell to die though, and he comes up with a plan that could save them all.